Hello everyone, Lost Galaxy Gamer here. Welcome to the new channel, LostGalaxyAdventure. So, for the first video, I'll be doing is on a Titan submarine disaster and some mystery around the company of Oceangate itself. Now, before we get into this video, I'm just going to do the normal little disclaimer thing. That all the pins in this video are not accusations of wrongdoing. I'm just a silly little VTuber looking at events that happened in recent history. Before we look into Oceangate, we need to look into one of its founders, Stockton Rush. Rush was interested in aviation and space travel from a very young age. Got his commercial pilot's license at just the age of 18. He had an ambition to become an astronaut, but due to poor eyesight, it ended any hopes for a military pilot career. When he turned 22, he graduated from the Princeton University with a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering. During his time at Princeton, he kept nurturing his technical skills, and after graduation, he joined the aerospace company. But I'm going to put a label on the screen because my brain cannot read it, because every time my brain just stutters and putters and doesn't want to say it. So there's going to be a little logo in the middle of the screen. Just for you. They were based in Seattle, and he was a flight test engineer on the F-15 Eagle program. Additionally, while working at the company, he worked on the Glossier 3 experimental aircraft and completed it around 1989. Then in 2006, after a submarine trip in British Columbia, his interest turned to the ocean and ocean exploration. Rush then built a miniature submarine using blueprints from a retired U.S. Navy commander. The sub was capable of dives up to 32 feet, and then this led him to found Oceangate in 2009. Now with a glimpse into Rush's life out of the way, let's look back to Oceangate. Oceangate was founded by Stockton Rush and Google Translate time.
Guillermo Sonlane.
In Seattle. Now my guess, Rush was the engineering operations side, with Guillermo being the business side of the whole venture. With the intentions of creating a small fleet of commercial submarines, which could be rented. Now they would start with a single submarine called the Antipodes. They bought it, and it would be the only submarine for about half the company's existence and for operational regards, and until they started development on their own submarines several years later. Now before we go any farther, let's do a little brief glimpse into the submarine Antipodes. It was first built in 1973 by Perry Submarine Company and was named PC-1501 and spent several years operating in the North Sea's oil fields. It was later rebuilt in 1995 and renamed to XPC-1501 and used in a private yacht for years then. Then later in 1999, Submarine Adventures purchased it, then modified it, and after sometimes rename it in 2001 to the Antipodes. In those few years that it existed with them, it took thousands of tourists down to dives up to 1,000 feet. And when 2009 rolled around, Oceangate bought it for $295,000. A little note here I'm going to put in, breaking up of all the timing and all that, but it's a little note that I feel like will get lost if I don't add this in right now. Oceangate did start trying to sell it in 2018 for $1,150,000, and then the price dropped to $795,000 in 2020, and it stayed up for sale up until the Titan disaster, and it never was ever known that if it was sold. Now back to Oceangate. In 2010, they started taking tourists off the coast of California. Also, they started working with the University of Washington to test sonar and robotic equipment. Or robotic arm equipment. You know, those little arms you see in all the movies. Next, in 2011, they surveyed and mapped the wreckage of the SS Governor, a ship that sunk in 1921 off the northwest coast of Washington State. Then in between 2012 and 2013, they operate off the coast of Florida, collaborating with the Miami-Dade Artificial Reef Program and also taking researchers aboard to investigate the spread of lionfish in the local ecosystem. The ticket prices for the trips down into the ocean depths were estimated to be between $7,500 to up to $40,000 per person. Now moving on to 2013, things started moving as the co-founder Guillermo stepped away, saying that Oceangate had moved from the startup phase into Russia's specialty of engineering. Also in that year, they started working on Cyclops 1 in collaboration with the University of Washington Applied Physics Laboratory, while Boeing worked with both Oceangate and the university for the initial design analysis. The initial design was to be made of carbon fiber, but was later switched to steel hull. Then later that year, a sub named Lula was purchased to be used as the base for the Cyclops sub. Little's known about the Lula sub other than it was from a company in the Azores and was already 12 years old at the time. The sub itself was designed for deep-sea research. Lula was renamed to Cyclops because, well, it got ripped apart for parts and refitted with all new interior, underwater sensors, and a brand new piloting system. And I'm not joking. But a lot of people thought this was a joke. A PlayStation 3 controller is the main control system for the sub, which I find that is wild. That is wild that someone made a PS3 controller the control system, because I feel like if you get it any damage, then you're just stuck. You're just stuck. Also at this time, contracts began to expand, with the University of Washington acting as intermediary with both the Office of Naval Research and the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA. That big, wonderful government agency, DARPA was buying contracts through the university, and then I'm assuming Oceangate was testing the stuff under the water. And then in 2015, the Cyclops was unveiled to the public. And interesting turn of events. I can't find out why this happened, or if it is out there, I kind of missed it. They located their headquarters to Everett, Washington. Then in 2016, they used the Cyclops to survey the remains of Andrea Doria, an Italian-flagged passenger liner that sank in the Atlantic near Nantucket Island in 1956. The ship was only sitting about 240 feet, or 73 heathen units under the water. And the next year, they made a 3 mile of the wreck, the surrounding debris fields, and the whole thing. And I did find a lot of testimonies because of this. It was like, oh wow, this is amazing. This is a triumph of science. Let's go. Years later, a Coast Guard hearing, David Lockridge, a former director of marine operations, testified that their operation of the wreck had many complications. Rush had apparently crashed into the wreck and then panicked. The original plan was for Rush to stay 164 feet away from the wreck, but Rush had disclosed the original plan. Later, when Lockridge tried to take the control from Rush, he refused, trying to get the sub out himself. I guess a little ego thing. Then after some yelling from Lockridge to Rush then threw the controller, and I believe it was like some buttons popped off. He said damaged it. Then he had to fix that controller, and then he drove the sub for the rest of the mission. After that incident, Lockridge was phased out of most project operations, because Rush should be a little bitch, in my opinion. During the early development of the Titan, or known at the time, Cyclops 2, the University of Washington Applied Physics Laboratory provided engineering assistance, but their help was discontinued later that year, and then switched to an in-house engineering team. Even with Lockridge mostly pushed out of most project operations, Rush still had him do an inspection of the Titan once it was built. During his inspection of the sub, the ability of the carbon composite hull to hold up under deep sea ocean pressure was a major concern for him. He also noted that material had been trimmed off on the hull's edges, so much so that you could shine a flashlight through it and see it. He recommended further testing with the goal of having the sub classed by Lloyd's Register or other similar standards from other organizations. Rush was opposed to having the sub classified, even after the first hull failed the Titanic level pressure tests. The proposal was made in 2019. I'm going to quote it word for word. Bringing an outside entity up to speed on every innovation before it is put into real-world testing is an anathema to rapid innovation. So TLDR, Rush was like, fuck any sort of outside scrutiny on what he is doing. That's kind of what it felt like, where it's like, you don't know what you're doing, I know what I'm doing. Now moving on to 2018, when the first version of the Titan sub was being finished, Lockridge had wrote a critical report of the project. It was terminated shortly after that. He then started a whistleblower claim against Oceangate, which ended after a few months long lawsuit, with Lockridge agreeing to a settlement to withdraw his whistleblower claim. I did a little bit when I was doing reading. He also, I believe, said that he felt threatened by the Oceangate lawyers, and that might be a reason why he took the settlement. Because some people might interpret that, oh, he just grabbed the bag and ran. You know, like, he might have felt like he probably couldn't win, or he felt like, I don't want to waste thousands, because the legal system is an expensive, absolute mess to go through. And it's one of those, do you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in court trying to do a thing, when trying to be like, hey, or do you get an offer to be like, here's some money, go away, and then not have to pay all those legal fees to fight and maybe not win. Also, another note, they renamed the Cyclops 2 to Titan, so now it's referred to the Titan from now on. Next up, in 2019, Oceangate announced they were planning on developing the Cyclops 3 and the Cyclops 4. Which, that kind of confuses me. They were just renamed the Cyclops 2 to Titan, so why didn't they just name those unique things? Maybe they're just using Cyclops 3 and 4 as a placeholder. And they had a targeted depth of 20,000 feet, or 6,000 heathen units. In early 2020, they announced that the development and manufacturing of the hulls would be performed at NASA. NASA's participation in this whole endeavor was because of the Space Act Agreement. Now it's time to look at the development of the Titan itself. Its main goal is to be able to go down to the Titanic wreck site, which was at 12,500 feet, or 3,800 heathen units, in depth. The hull was constructed out of titanium and carbon fiber composite materials. Also, a little side note here, they upgraded the PS3 controller to a Logitech controller, so at least it's slightly more expensive it costs. When I mean controller, I mean actually gaming controller. I'll throw another image up here, because I'm going to be throwing images as they go. It was designed and developed originally in a partnership with the University of Washington and also Boeing. But later, due to Russia ignoring the recommendations and testing demands, the partnership fell apart. A new hull had to be built for the Titan in 2021 after the hull cracked after 50 test dives, which only 3 of those test dives made it to 12,500 feet. I'm assuming they were doing all this remotely, or had some kind of remote program, because I couldn't really find much information on that. When the Titan was rebuilt, it used salvage from the previous sub. This was found out later due to a testimony by Lockridge in the Coast Guard hearings that Russ had a habit of using almost everything. So, we have this guy who is building a sub trying to go down farther than anyone else has gone down, in terms of a lot of people going down at once. So, this man has already doing a bad thing about reusing everything, instead of possibly refreshing parts and technology that might need to be refreshed, in my opinion. Now it's time to finally talk about the day of disaster. The people on the sub were Stockton Rush, the CEO and the pilot of the vessel at the time, veteran Titanic Explorer, PH, Marguerite, French name, aviation executive of Action Aviation, Harmish Harding, and then a Pakistani-born business executive, Submarine. Here, I'm just going to put this name into Google Translate real quick.
Shahzada.
Shahzada. The brain just did not want to read that word. Darwood and his son Suleiman. The ticket prices to go down to the Titanic were $250,000 per person. Now, I have done a little thing. I have the logs from the Coast Guard hearing. And just a little disclaimer, these are text logs, they are not voice comms, they did not actively hear each other, it was just text in between, so do not misunderstand because I'm going to do the logs read aloud. They're not actually read aloud. 9:19 a.m. Depth 751 feet. Other prints I have tracking. Titan descending through 235. Other prints I have tracking. 9:20 a.m. Depth 823 feet. Titan, yeah. Titan A. Polar Prince AA. 9:23 a.m. Depth 1,282 feet. Titan, no ATM, are you on? 9:24 a.m. Depth 1,325 feet. Polar Prince, ATM is on. Polar Prince, do not read you on ATM. 9:25 a.m. Depth 1,466 feet. Titan A. Polar Prince AA. 9:28 a.m. Depth 1,912 feet. Polar Prince, we see you at 33 meters a second. Polar Prince, meters a minute. 9:29 a.m. Depth 1,991 feet. Titan A. 9:30 a.m. Depth 2,198 feet. Polar Prince AA. 9:31 a.m. Depth 2,299 feet. Polar Prince, we have you at 680 meters. 9:33 a.m. Depth 2,542 feet. Titan confirmed having trouble entering PO with ship I. 9:34 a.m. Depth 2,634 feet. Polar Prince A. Titan A. Polar Prince AA. Titan A. Polar Prince AA. 9:35 a.m. Depth 2,808 feet. Polar Prince, what is your dive payload? 9:37 a.m. Depth 3,034 feet. Polar Prince, report your dive payload weight. 9:38 a.m. Depth 3,198 feet. Polar Prince, report your dive payload weight. Titan 1,676. 9:39 a.m. Depth 3,293 feet. Polar Prince, acknowledge 1,676. Polar Prince, report your depth. Titan 1,676. 9:40 a.m. Depth 3,474 feet. Polar Prince, depth, not payload, please. Titan 1,050. 9:41 a.m. Depth 3,540 feet. Titan 1,085. 9:42 a.m. Depth 3,618 feet. Polar Prince, acknowledge 1,085. Titan A. Polar Prince AA. 9:46 a.m. Depth 4,153 feet. Titan A. 9:54 a.m. Depth 5,085 feet. Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your display? Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your Evologics display? 9:56 a.m. Depth 5,318 feet. Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your Evologics display? 9:57 a.m. Depth 5,456 feet. Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your Evologics display? 9:59 a.m. Depth 5,666 feet. Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your Evologics display? 10 a.m. Depth 5,816 feet. Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your Evologics display? 10:06 a.m. Depth 6,505 feet. Polar Prince, do you see Polar Prince on your Evologics display? 10:08 a.m. Depth 6,719 feet. Polar Prince K. Titan K. 10:09 a.m. Depth 6,843 feet. Polar Prince. Do you see Polar Prince on your Everlogix display? 10:10 a.m. Depth 69.29 feet. Polar Prince. Is Polar Prince on your Everlogix display? Polar Prince. Do you see Polar Prince on your Everlogix display? 10:11 a.m. Depth 7,024 feet. Polar Prince. I need better comms from you. Titan. Yes. 10:12 a.m. Depth 7,122 feet. Titan. Lost system and chat settings. Titan. This is PH. Polar Prince. Acknowledge status. Do you see Polar Prince on your display? Titan. This is PH. Polar Prince. Hi PH. 10:14 a.m. Depth 7,447 feet. Titan. Yes. Titan. All good here. 10:15 a.m. Depth 7,624 feet. Polar Prince. Acknowledged. All good. 10:17 a.m. Depth 7,814 feet. Titan A. 10:23 a.m. Depth 8,464 feet. Titan POI ORK. We are east-southeast of North Bow. 10:25 a.m. Depth 8,710 feet. Polar Prince POI ORK. We are east-southeast of the in bow. 10:26 a.m. Depth 8,851 feet. Titan AQ. 10:27 a.m. Depth 8,920 feet. Polar Prince. Signal strong on our end. Do you see Polar Prince on your display? 10:29 a.m. Depth 9,087 feet. Titan. Are you now at the bow? Titan. RSSI -60. 10:30 a.m. Depth 9,189 feet. Polar Prince. Polar Prince not at bow, making our way there. Polar Prince. Your position jumps significantly with each ping. 10:31 a.m. Depth 9,301 feet. Titan A. Polar Prince AA. 10:36 a.m. Depth 9,911 feet. Polar Prince. Position jumps significantly with each ping. 10:38 a.m. Depth 10,075 feet. Titan. Any question mark? Polar Prince. Remember to write down location and time when you deploy the NI skin bottle. 10:39 a.m. Depth 10,177 feet. Titan. When? Messages truncated. 10:40 a.m. Depth 10,219 feet. Polar Prince. When you deploy NI skin, Polar Prince, write down the time and location. Titan. No NI skin. Never cleaned and stream bath. 10:41 a.m. Depth 10,351 feet. Polar Prince. Acknowledge no NI skin. 10:42 a.m. Depth 10,446 feet. Titan A. 10:47 a.m. Depth 10,977 feet. Drop 2 weights. Alright, just to make sure there's no confusion, the Polar Prince did not hear the implosion at the time. The National Oceanic Atmosphere Administration passive acoustic recorder located about 900 miles away did. So there is no... Don't misunderstand. The Polar Prince had no idea what happened. What happened during the day, the kind of like the events, more to say, the Polar Prince had lost contact with the Titan, which was not uncommon. I didn't know this at the time. I feel like a lot of people thought this was just his first excursion into the water with it and like thought he was an idiot. But he had already done 13 dives to the Titanic in the sub beforehand. And losing communications with the sub was pretty common. So they set up a time thing for it to at least come back to the surface or make contact at least at a certain time. So like if they had time operation stuff where it's like, oh yeah, be back in 3 hours, that kind of thing. Or like make contact or something along those lines. Then after the time came and went, they radioed for help. A massive rescue search operation was then mounted, which lasted 4 days until wreckage was found. And here's the other fun stuff that was around the whole situation, which I didn't know about, because it kind of like drifted out of the consciousness of news media, and when it does that, no one remembers anything. Following the news of the fate of the Titan sub, the company closed its headquarters at Everett indefinitely. And then shortly after, they shut off the Oceangate website. And I'm going to throw up the following message of what it says right now. You can go look at it right now if you want to see it. Because it's still technically up. Within every partnership they had ever worked with, came up to state they did not design, they did not engineer, they did not do any testing of the Titan submarine. Being like, we ain't at fault, we didn't do it, don't blame us. Kind of thing. We're going to go into the more morbid part. It's believed with some certainty that no one on board suffered. Everyone died instantly in the implosion. I was about to say explosion. So fast, in fact, that even the brain signal of pain from the implosion happening would not register in the brain before they died. And then they started recovering it to figure out what happened, which they did recover remains from an implosion, and those remains had to be sent off to labs to be identified who's who because they were imploded. And then, you know, for burial, because you gotta bury the dead person. Big brain takes from me. In the following months after the tragedy, the Coast Guard conducted hearings about the Titan tragedy, and a lot of the information that I got for the script and the video itself came from these hearings. Because other than that, all I would have was puff pieces and like articles from back when the company operated to go off of. A lot of the testimony came from ex-employees that described Russia's habits and tendencies to just intimidate people to agree with them. Oh, you don't think this is going to work right? No, it's going to work right because Russia says it's going to work right, kind of thing. And it made it really hard for anyone to work with them. A lot of the engineering team quit. I know that. Because it was like, hey, this is a bad idea, kind of like warning. And he's like, no, this is my idea, a good idea, you just make it work. Now, it's time to go into the main theory of why the Titan submarine imploded. It's believed that was due to fatigue from prior dives that caused microcracks and delamination within carbon fiber hull layers of the structure that made it implode. Because after using it so many times. Because it turns out, the 13 dives are not the only dives this thing did to the Titanic. It did apparently 50 test dives, making that a total of 63 dives. So it had done more dives than its previous version that had to be rebuilt. So, and it's also believed that through Lockwood's testimony, even though he wasn't at the company and the things he saw, that it also was compounded with possible manufacturing flaws in the hull due to cutting corner, or like cost cutting. Alright, it's time for me to ramble about my own theory of what happened. Because I've looked at the logs, I have thought about them, and I've come to some conclusions of my own. I've also used some... I'm not afraid to admit it, I've used a guide to try to calculate things about, like, trajectory and crap. Because, just to, theorize and think. Because there is, some things I've thought about. There's, thought one, which was quickly disproven by the AIs, was it possible that he went too fast? And the AI's no, even if he was able to go faster, that wouldn't have been the cause of the implosion, because the extra stress on the sub wouldn't have been from the increased pressure. So then I started spitballing with the AI and asking certain questions. And one that made me think of things I've read, I saw the log, and kind of thought about, is there's two things that could, and also Rush's personality and history, and there's two things I thought that could be plausible that also could be things and reasons why it failed. Reason number one, or theory number one over here, Rush being an aggressive pilot and reckless sometimes. When he because the Titan submarine imploded right around when the weights were dropped, because that was how they were lowering themselves into the depths of the ocean. And I thought, what if the thought process is, what if he did a reckless maneuver while dropping the weights? Where he dropped the weights, did a maneuver that might have made him do a trajectory into the weight itself, as he then maneuvered it downwards, and then gunned it because he was he's been reckless, known to be reckless in the past, and ran into his own weight. Because maybe the current drifted it in a way he didn't expect, and him driving recklessly rammed himself into the weight. Which, theoretically, it wouldn't take much if the hull's already starting to fail. Because there theoretically could have been if this was the cause, that the sub could have at least maybe survived this trip. Whoever would have gone on the next trip would probably have died, or maybe the next few trips after. The other theory I had thought about, what if, because there had been records in the log itself talking about when they were going down, they were already having poor communications, and they had said in the near end log, there is no in-skin bottle. Which that is apparently supposed to be for, getting samples, and there was also a thing called the string bath, which is supposed to be a net, from my understanding. And they were not, the bottle was not cleaned, and the other thing was not operable, I think. I'd have to go look. Go check the logs again. I have the logs literally in front of my face. Never cleaned, no in-skin, never cleaned, and string bath. So maybe they didn't have that one ready either. So that to me is a red flag. That to me means they could have been very lax on maintenance, or just kind of forgot about maintenance sometimes on the sub. And there's another theory that I thought about. What if one of the weights got stuck? And due to how Rush is panicky and reckless, what if he then tried to dislodge the weight to get balance back? And when he dislodged it, he then had the weight crash into the hull, doing a weird maneuver. Now, both these theories rely on Rush doing something really fucking stupid. Which, the only reason why I'm proposing them is because Rush in the past had done something stupid that has been cataloged by Lockridge. And the weight, because my entire reason why I think the Titan submarine failed is because of those weights. Something happened with the weights that we can probably never know, because we didn't have a camera following the dang thing, and the sub blew up into a million pieces in terms of the hull shattering. And even a light bump, because that's what I asked the AI to calculate, was the hull and all that, because there was a lot of technical mumbo jumbo on the hull and stuff. And it calculated that even a light hit from the thing could have possibly caused the hull to fracture and it just implode because of it being under such weight at the time. So I feel like that is my personal theory. Something happened with the weights. Just 6 seconds after they dropped the weights, or they sent the message that dropped the weights, the sub lost communications, and that's when it's believed the sub imploded. The other thing is, I also kind of like just came to realize right now, that I feel I might be the mind frame of the mindset or current frame of mind of Russ and the final moments, the final dive. You saw back when it was like Polar Prince saying, "Hey, do you see me on your display? Do you see me on your viral logics? Do you see me on your display? Do you see me on your display?" And then eventually PH had to get on the thing and be like, "Hey, this is PH. Yeah, I see ya." So I'm wondering if Rush got pissed off, because the lost system at OChat settings. And Rush got annoyed with it and just gave up. And just like, fuck it, I'm gonna dive. Like the whole fuck it, we ball, and then just like, it doesn't care. Because Rush has done this before. And has gone reckless. And what if, because maybe PH was saying right, because someone had to type this in. That PH is typing it in, because Russ isn't the one typing the logs in this at this point, if we assume that. Because PH had to get on the console himself to start typing back to the blueprints. What if he was typing and drop 2 weights? Right as Russ was going to drop the 2 weights. And then whatever he did, or whatever happened with the weights, happened. Which to them, Russ wouldn't even know what he did wrong when he died. If he did something wrong. Same thing if the weights did something weird, if somehow a rogue current and a bad maneuver from Russ caused the weight to collide with the sub, at a just wrong angle that might have caused the sub to just pop. Now that's my rambling theories about what happened to the Titan sub. It's one of those things that this was a matter of when, not if. With how it was built, how Russ was running the company, Russ was going to eventually kill somebody with how he was running the company. He has made a very good test case of why carbon fiber might be used in certain subholds. But the problem is, he cost the lives of 5 people, which is unacceptable. Because it felt like his entire design philosophy was make it as cheap as possible, worry about the safety later. And he's like, and then claims to be focused on safety all the time, but not wanting to get classified, saying it takes too long, too expensive. And the thing is, there's a reason why it's expensive, is because this could cost people's lives if not done right. Well, that's all I got. I know a lot of people have made videos on this, but I kind of got interested in this, and I spur of the moment kind of thing. I want to do my own thing. Because me not seeing anything about it made it where going into this, I had a blank slate of mind. I was completely open of just researching it myself. I pulled a bunch of things I thought were interesting, and it felt like relevant information. Stuff that I don't think anyone talked about after the Titan imploded. I don't think, because this felt like one of those 4-day thing, like, because it was up until it finally imploded that then everyone stopped caring about it. It felt like. Oh, the only thing is people memed on it because they thought there was a PlayStation 3 controller on the Titan, because I know that happened. Also, a lot of people I do remember were just unsympathetic because they thought it was just a bunch of rich people that died, which technically it was a bunch of rich people, but it's also one of those things, like, Rush was the kind of like idiot / asshole, but I have no knowledge of any of the other people. Those people could have been great people. And people were so quick to just, wow, a bunch of rich people died. I'm like, that's not a way to feel about human life. Is when someone that you possibly could dislike dies, is like, yippee, they died! But that kind of did happen. That was the only thing I kind of do remember, is that people just almost celebrating these people died. But, you know, that's social media. Bring out the worst in people. Hopefully I did a good job in the overview. Now I gotta do the YouTuber thing. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I also have a gaming channel called LostGalaxyAdventure. I also stream on Twitch. I also got a Discord. Leave all the links in the descriptions. Thanks for watching.